I've been a merchant marine for 23 years, working on cargo ships across every major shipping route in the world. What I witnessed last month off the coast of South Africa has made me seriously consider early retirement. I'm sharing this story now because people need to know what's really out there in the dark waters. I'm Captain David Morrison of the container ship MSC Valencia. We were making a routine voyage from Singapore to Cape Town when it happened. The night was unusually calm, that kind of stillness that makes experienced sailors nervous. The sea was like black glass, reflecting a nearly full moon. I was in the bridge with my first officer, Michael Chen, when our radar picked up something odd. A large vessel about 2 nautical miles off our starboard side, but it wasn't broadcasting any AIS signal. That's a big red flag these days. All modern ships are required to have their automatic identification system running at all times. "Captain," Michael said, his voice shaking. "That ship, it's the SS Orang Medan." I almost dropped my coffee. Every sailor knows about the Orang Medan, a Dutch cargo vessel that supposedly sent out distress signals in 1948 before being found with its entire crew dead, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. The ship caught fire and sank while being towed to port. They never recovered the wreck. Through the bridge windows, we could see the Orang Medan getting closer. Its deck was visible now in the moonlight. Empty. No crew, no movement, just rust and decay. But then we heard it. A sound that will haunt me until the day I die. Music. Faint crackling music coming through our dead radio system. It sounded like an old Dutch military march, playing through layers of static. And beneath it, what sounded like dozens of voices whispering in a language none of us understood. The temperature in the bridge plummeted. I could see my breath. Michael started screaming about faces in the windows, faces pressed against the glass from the outside. We were 12 stories up. I ordered everyone off the bridge. As we ran, I glanced back one last time. The Orang Medan was less than half a mile away now. I swear I could see figures on its deck, dark shapes moving in ways that weren't quite human. We made it to the crew quarters and stayed there until dawn. When we finally ventured back to the bridge, the Orang Medan was gone. Our electronics came back online like nothing had happened, but every compass on the ship was destroyed. Needles bent and twisted like they'd been melted. The footprints we found on the bridge, dozens of them, were made with what looked like seawater. But when we tested it, the salt concentrations matched 1940 sea levels. The company launched an investigation, of course. They blamed equipment malfunction and mass hysteria, said the footprints came from our own crew, made us sign papers swearing we'd never speak of it. I'm back at sea now, on a different route. But I keep thinking about those Dutch records from 1948, the ones describing the Orang Medan's final message. All officers, including captain, are dead lying in chart room and bridge. Probably whole crew dead. Then the chilling final words, "I die." They never did figure out what killed that crew. Some say it was carbon monoxide poisoning. Others blame an unsecured chemical cargo. But I know what I saw that night. And every time I'm on watch and the sea goes still, I find myself scanning the horizon, praying I don't see that rusted hull or hear that old Dutch march crackling through our radio, because I know the Orang Medan is still out there, sailing its eternal voyage, and I know that somewhere in those cold, dark waters, it's waiting for another ship to pass too close on a quiet night. Last week, I received a strange email from an old sailor in the Netherlands. He'd heard about our encounter through the maritime grapevine and wanted me to know something. His grandfather had been part of the original search team that found the Orang Medan in 1948. On his deathbed, his grandfather revealed that they'd found something in the captain's logbook. The last entry, written in shaky handwriting. It read, "They come at night, when the sea is calm. They wear the faces of our dead loved ones. They promise to let us see them again. All we have to do is let them in. God forgive me." I'm about to open the door. The Dutch authorities had kept this hidden for 75 years. Now I understand why the faces in those windows look so familiar to each member of my crew. Whatever is sailing that ghost ship knows exactly how to lure sailors to their doom. I never should have taken that construction job. The money was good. Too good, really. Now I know why no other contractor in Brisbane would touch it. My name's Peter Walsh. and I'm writing this from the psychiatric ward of Royal Brisbane Hospital. The doctors say I'm suffering from PTSD and acute paranoid delusions. I wish they were right. It started 3 months ago when my company won the bid to build a new shopping complex in an old part of town. The land had been vacant for decades, just an overgrown lot behind the old Methodist church. The paperwork all checked out, and the price was well below market value. Should have been my first warning. The trouble began during the initial excavation. One of my operators, Dave, was clearing the land when his bulldozer hit something hard. Not unusual. We often find old foundations or pipes. But this was different. It was a headstone, weathered, and half buried. Then we found another, and another. Turns out we'd stumbled upon an unmarked cemetery dating back to the 1850s. The church records had been lost in a fire in 1902, and somehow the cemetery had been forgotten, literally buried by time and development. The proper thing would have been to stop work immediately, but the developer was breathing down my neck. They'd already sold most of the retail spaces. Millions were on the line. They brought in an archaeological team to do a quick survey. They estimated there were about 60 graves, mostly immigrants who died during a cholera outbreak. The developer got some fast-tracked permits to relocate the remains. That's when things got weird. The first incident happened after we removed the first set of remains. 3 of our floodlights exploded simultaneously. Could have been a power surge, except they were on different circuits. Then tools started disappearing, only to turn up in strange places, like my hammer being perfectly balanced on top of a 20-foot pole that no one had climbed. The night security guard quit after his first shift. Said he kept hearing children singing an old hymn, but the nearest house was half a kilometer away. His replacement lasted 2 nights before having a nervous breakdown. Claimed he saw a woman in a Victorian dress walking through solid concrete barriers. I didn't believe any of it until the night I stayed late to catch up on paperwork. I was in the site office when the temperature dropped so fast my coffee froze solid. Then I heard it, the sound of dirt being shoveled. I looked out the window and saw them. Dozens of figures in old-fashioned clothes, digging graves in the excavated ground. They weren't transparent or ghostly. They looked as solid as you or me. But their faces, God, their faces were wrong, like they'd been buried for a century. One of them looked up and saw me. Its eyes were empty sockets filled with soil, but somehow I knew it could see me. It smiled, a horrible, dirt-filled grin, and pointed at the ground beside it. There was a fresh grave there with a headstone bearing my name. I ran. Drove home doing twice the speed limit. But it didn't matter. They followed me. Every night now I hear the digging, sometimes right under my bed. My walls are seeping dirty water that smells of decay. Last week I found my kitchen filled with dirt, actual Victorian-era soil according to the lab tests. And the photos. God, the photos. Every picture in my house, even my Facebook profile, has changed. In each one I'm standing in that graveyard, my face increasingly decayed in each shot. The developers hired another company to finish the job. I heard they're having trouble too. 3 workers hospitalized last week. Something about unexplained injuries that look like decomposition, but on living tissue. I went back to the site yesterday, just to see. The shopping complex is half built now, but it's already falling apart. The walls are cracking and grass is growing through the concrete. Not normal grass. Botanists say it's a species common in 19th century cemeteries, but extinct for the last 100 years. The doctors say they'll release me once I stop insisting the dead are after me. They don't understand. Those graves weren't just disturbed, they were desecrated. We didn't just move bodies, we erased the last trace of 60 souls from history, and now they want to be remembered. Last night I caught my reflection in the hospital window. For a moment, just a moment, my face was decaying, my eyes filled with soil. And behind me, I could see them all, standing in their Victorian best, smiling their dirt-filled smiles. They want me to join them, to help them dig more graves, one for each person involved in destroying their resting place. And every night, the sound of digging gets closer. The doctors won't let me have a shovel. They think it's because I might hurt myself. But really, it's the only way to make the digging stop. The dead want their graveyard back, and they won't rest until they get it, one way or another.